And kind folks, welcome to RPG with DBJ, and welcome to today, the Day of Chains. Now, there are many problematic elements we can go through here, and I mean that for our algorithmic portion of YouTube, but we can get a little bit dark, I think, without upsetting the algo overlords. Because today, using our prompt for the Day of Chains, it can mean any number of things. Now, of course, as any kind of fantasy role playing game, we're definitely going to talk about, you know, breaking the chains of enslavement and slavery and breaking out of bondage and such, because it's a very common trope in fantasy gaming. But maybe there are other things that chains are tangentially related to. Are we breaking the chains of thought and mind? Are we breaking intrinsic and in-depth methods of social constructs? Are we breaking the chains of ancient beasts that have been shackled for a millennium? Maybe the player characters stumble upon an ancient curse, that evil cultist group that, of course, we want to murder, kill, but realizing that they've been devoted to keeping a great and powerful entity chained for centuries. Or maybe the player characters themselves are enforcers. Maybe you're playing a darker world. I don't know, but let's get our mind fuel started, get that flame ignited, and do that during the intro. Well, again, hello, creators, community, kind folks, and thank you guys, co-host here, for being here. And Mr. Thomas Anderson, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, addiction can be considered chains holding you down, or being enslaved by a chemical addiction. Um, I brought this up before. There's a movie that's somewhat controversial called Bones and All. Spoiler alert, it's a coming of age love story about modern day cannibals. Um, it's a pretty graphic story as well, and it deals with it's like an allegory, in my opinion, for addiction and such, which also can be part of this day of chains. And I specifically didn't word it as like breaking chains or escaping, especially if the player characters themselves are the enforcers bringing chains to a particular adversary, event, community, or something like that. While it does seem to be a bit counter to the freedoms that we love to have in our role playing games, it could be the player characters are like, listen, there's something going wild out there, Monster Hunter style, and it may be impossible to slay the thing that or things that are out there, and instead they may need to capture it, enslave it in many ways, which would especially in a if you want to have some moral ambiguity, um, it, you could have some events where the player characters are tasked with, or at least that's how the story starts. Your theme that they're tasked with enslaving something or peoples or whatever, and then realize the player characters themselves realize, like, ooh, maybe we were on the wrong side of history on this one. um, there's a pretty dark turn, strangely enough, where I have a setting called Salt in Wounds, and it's a setting where there's a Tarask that is being harvested, and it kind of makes the Tarask be, a mindless kaiju entity become the one you feel for in a strange way in fantasy and such. It's like, yeah, maybe you should die, but maybe not be tortured forever. Hey, Baron, what's up? What's up? You guys are so silly. Like, hey, I made it. Woo. Especially if you're here in the States, it's like, oh, they're getting up godly early. Yeah. TA says chains can also be considered, yes, for imprisoning something, let's say, evil, which I absolutely agree with you on that one, too. I mean, how many uh, ancient stories have we heard? The Olympian gods imprisoning the Titans into Tartarus or something, or um, a demon or some kind of celestial creature chained against a rock and having its liver eaten out over and over again, and then the players may need to rescue, or heck, there may be some player characters that are pretty powerful that have been that can't be slain, but they've been imprisoned and chained. A warlock that's gone against their patron that has punished them. Yeah. That's so silly. It's about Shatterverse. Mm-mm-mm. That's pretty hilarious. Talking about Shatterverse. Yeah. I can only take that channel in small bursts. Drew says, speaking of addiction, I think the dark side of the Force in Star Wars is something that should work like an addiction in game mechanics. Absolutely. And while I may not be a complete fan of the dice system for Fantasy Flight games, um, I do like the light side, dark side method that they use because uh, if I could, if I can simply describe it, um, there's a die where there's more dark sides to it than light sides, making it easier to use the dark side. But if you roll the light side, you get twice as many points. So the light side is actually more powerful, but the dark side's easier. And I would agree with you that there seems to be a correlation, and to make it mechanically feasible is kind of interesting, right? Like you need, if you wanted to incorporate being locked in, whether it's addiction or a force of power or something like that, and you wanted to establish on this day of change, like for example, magic itself on this day of change could lock people into a method of behavior that is causing all of the other things in the world. Like for example, some would say that vampires and liches and dragons and that kind of thing are they are magic itself incarnate, that they only exist because there's magic in the world, and if it wasn't for player characters and powerful entities like themselves using the magic, there wouldn't be any fuel to create those entities in the first place. And laying off of using it, going cold turkey as it were, although maybe we can move away from the addiction analogies, might be pretty difficult. And so there's too many benefits for using magic and not enough. In D20 there aren't any drawbacks for using magic, but maybe today there are some. TA says, or it could be a chain needed to tie down Cat's tail so she will stop swinging it around, knocking everything over on my desk. Listen, you want to talk about an animal that can escape a chain? That's why we don't walk cats. Oh man. Mm-mm-mm. I had a world where the only food source had to be beaten to death to ensure the meat was not poisoned by a chemical. How that was present when dying. If it was not in excruciating pain, they had no other option for food, even though they were extremely empathic, so felt every moment of the creatures they ate pain while killing it. Well, that's pretty horrible. I can't have. Ugh. That's one, if not a number of reasons why there are many people who consider themselves to be vegetarian because or vegan because of you know they are they're on the empathic spectrum. Theirs is tuned up high, and so that's why it's like I can't eat a thing due to the suffering of the thing. Um, but also when it comes to the day of chains, listen, and let me get on my soapbox here. And I don't know if you guys are old enough to understand that soap used to come in boxes and people would stand on them in city parks to get people's attention, which is where that came from. So while I stand on my soapbox, there are lots of problematic things that we in our modern society have overlaid into our role playing experiences. And one of those is the world's most popular role playing game wants to reduce the barrier for people getting into the game. And one of the ways they want to reduce that barrier is to reduce or eliminate problematic elements. I feel like as a company, you do want to do that because it's about market share and public opinion and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that role playing games are not about the problematic events. It's about us beating ass to defeat the people and punch people in the throat who create problematic events. Right? There's no the point of having flesh eating monsters is not because we're proud of flesh eating monsters, is to murder kill the flesh eating monsters to stop them. So all kinds of prejudices and slavery and torture and cannibalism and all that kind of stuff exists in our role-playing games, kind of for the sole purpose of us going, we need to stop it. And if bad guys aren't doing bad things, then what are the good guys there for? I understand that there's also people in the real world who want to play role-playing games and exist in worlds to stroke their sociopathic and psychopathic tendencies, almost like a point of pride. Yeah, there are those people that exist out there, but they're fringe, and you can't control other people's thoughts. So, although in a fantasy realm there might be, I'm looking at you, Ivlithids and mind flayers out there controlling people's minds and getting them to do what you want, and the players themselves might wake up on this day of change and realize, holy shit, we've been have we been mind controlled this whole time? Did we is this a an episode of They Live and we now realize that we've been there's been an invasion force and we can now see them? I don't know. Could be something like that. Mm-mm-mm. Thomas Anderson always bringing the technological analyses. That is something I would like to see if it's possible to get the amount of meat needed by raising animals that you only eat those who die healthy deaths from age while still young enough to live. Find other ways they fit into the cycle of a farm rather than only being for meat, like eggs from chickens, milk from cows and goats, fertilizer from animals that eat plants to ramp up the plants that can be grown, and use a number of plants to supplement the needed meat, like algae, like spirulina and blue green, or more potent protein rich things. Well, that's why they're working. Fast food industry is trying to work on processed meat, basically meat that has never been in an animal. Basically, you just extrude it out of a machine and it looks just like hamburger or steak or something like that. I think at a certain point it will happen, but then we need to get over our distaste for meat extrusions, if that makes sense. We'll find something. Especially when we become a spacefaring society. At a certain point, it'll be like meat. We'll need protein, but we probably won't have meat in space. It'll probably be like from insects, like you said, algae, plant matter that grows like protein bonds and things like that. I could see that. Drew says, I think having bad things is fine to have in the fiction, but it is something different when villains get colored gray in Disney, or the dark skinned elves are depicted as evil. I do agree. I think this is weird to say, but the and when I say we, I'm talking about fanboys, because and fanboys, fangirls, fan pronies, where someone creates a story, and what's the big thing now is the graying, the the sympathetic villain, right? The villain does evil things, but we sympathize. The problem is, I don't think it's the writing. I think it's our interpretations too. A lot of this stuff is our fault. So when you, it's to me, it's the Black Panther Killmonger problem, right? Where everyone's like, "Oh, Killmonger was right," and I'm going, "No, he wasn't. He was the bad guy," right? Everyone ignores the fact that he killed his girlfriend, murdered his ally, destroyed a tradition, and wanted to eradicate a nation and turn it into a totalitarian government. Like, everyone's going like, "Oh well, he is trying to support his people," and I'm going, "Yeah, but you only think that way because most people don't ally ourselves with the terrible things. We think that we're going to rub up against all the good stuff." And so a part of that is our fault, I think, Drew, expanding on what you're saying. And it's also the idea of like, um, classifying only the dark people as the bad ones, right? Because the idea of the evil orcs, and it's like, well, it's wrong to make them evil, and it's like, no, well, really, it's the fault of the players who are like, I want to play an orc, or I want to play a hobgoblin. Well, now you gave them nuance that wasn't there before, so that's not the game's fault. That's your fault for doing it, and you can't have it both ways. Either there's nuance or there isn't, but you can't be like, well, I'm the one who happens to have the nuance, but all the other ones are stereotypes, right? We go to a pretty dark path today, which I want to bring up an article in just a moment, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And it's about uh, death row inmates playing Dungeons and Dragons um, to bide their time, because they are in death row for so long, and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons without any of the supplies, which is pretty interesting. TA says, well, that is something for the replicator tech, where machines that mass produce one chemical from others. So all the needed ingredients for meat can be mixed afterwards and then print these out. Yep. Using lasers to cook it in layers as it's printed out. And talk about 3D printing meats and things like that, or consumables, I suppose. I suppose a thing doesn't need to be meat. It can just be a consumable, and then we just label it meat, right? As long as it has everything that we need for nutrients, and then we just the black market flavors. No one wants to buy the black market, I don't know, liver and onions, but juicy burger injection. Ooh. Yeah. Yep, printed using lasers to cook it in layers as is printed out to get the needed textures of natural meat, even though it's just the oils, fats, proteins, and similar compounds found in meat cells, as well as the mineral supplements and vitamins normally found in it. Um, it's all going to be, we are very, human beings are very subjective, and you could make a gray block of chewable. That doesn't make it meat, even though it might have all the compounds in it. It's going to be, we love texture and scent, and embracing the idea of how it feels in our hand, and mouth feel and all that other kind of stuff. Oh, Drew says, I know I made a lot of typos, but this time I indeed meant to say gay, not gray. Oh, you did. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that. Yes, 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 yes. I apologize. Let me go back, right? Because you are correct that how Disney colors gayism for their villains, which is kind of weird because it's like taking a stereotype, even though the stereotype doesn't quite exist that way. You know what I mean? I hear you, Drew. Yeah, it's pretty horrible too because you um on one hand you would like to feel that if you're going to embrace everything, then everybody has to get their chance in the spotlight, even the bad guy, right? So, on an equality level, um, you can't always be the hero. Not you. When I say you, me, right? If I'm gender fluid, then and I want to see that everywhere, then you got to see them as bad guys. The problem is uh is an equal amount of display, right? Every villain can't have the traits, if as it were, right? The stereotypes, which is pretty funny. But yeah, I wonder if, and this is I'm posing this as a question because in the states we tend to associate uh quasi Euro trash accents as culturally villainous. I don't know where it comes from, but there's something about it. And then there's this like there's this tinge of asexuality layered over top of it, and I don't know why that's a trope. You're making me think here. I'd have to think deeper. My brain set isn't going there, but it does feel like there's something like that. Like Maris is obviously we've gotten on to the connotations of chains regarding imprisonment and restraint, but could the day of chains also not represent linking and unity? See, now that's also a possibility. I mean, like the image I used is specifically, it's a bit dark. You could see like, I mean, I use Canva. So I snatch an image and make a thumbnail and all that kind of crap. But it does have a dark connotation, but it is possible that there are like the day of chains could be like Mike Marin is mentioning that the separation of peoples, faction, cultures, distances, arguments amongst family and friends and all that kind of stuff could exist, and on this day either people realize or it is a it the day begins with the idea that you know what, we really do need to reach out to our reestablish connections with our allies, maybe become more intrinsically tied to our enemies, understanding that we both have a commonality. Hey, we both need to survive through the winter, and um, we have shelter, they have the food. We both need to work together. Um, hey, they have the brains, I have the brawn. Let's make something better. Anyway, an old '80s reference, but that could be a thing, especially if those bonds have been broken for a long time. And today's the day where everyone reflects back and goes, hey, we need to bond together, which makes a great motivation for some bad guys to ensure that those things don't happen. And the player characters might need to. Um, Drew, you're so funny. No, because I recognize what you said. I kind of recognize it. Like, yeah, there is a bit of that, like Euro trash, stupid. Like, and when I say that, I don't mean Europeans are trashy. I'm saying there's a stateside like tropish writing that happens in like a lot of Hollywood where they go, "Oh, we want to make our bad guy well spoken and elite. Hey, let's give him some kind of semi not particularly specific regional you know, European styled accent. And oh, let's put them in an ascot and have one of their hands flop around randomly, loose at the right. It's a very lazy writing, but yeah, you have the copper, I have the tin. Let's make lots of brass. Yeah, right. But no, that could be a real thing where there are the dwarves are doing their dwarviness and the elves are being elvish and such, and the PCs are like, why can't we just get together? And that would be pretty interesting for a bad guy going around like you could both have physical attacks. Of course, you have to roll some dice and have some combat, but there could also be social interactions like, hey dwarves, who have you been talking to? And it's like, oh, we've been talking to the, I don't know, the I gotta come up with a dumb name. I gotta pull something out of my ass. Okay, we've been talking to the I don't know, the clan of the spiders or something, and they claim to have a web that connects all of us, but I don't like the way they're doing it, you know. And of course, the PCs are like, well, they kind of have like spider tattoos all over their faces. You might not want to talk to them, right? But anyway, but yes, it could be something where there's a faction who's pretending to link people together, but what they're doing is they're just pulling the strings, and the player characters have to confront them socially. You throw some exploration because if they're related to spiders, maybe they've got like, I don't know, a gang hangout or something like that that's difficult to climb to or scale around or whatever. And then of course they leave their spiders everywhere that are looking and watching and listening in on conversations. So that'd be kind of cool to have something like that. Mm-mm-mm. So I like the Unity idea there, Mike. TA says, I would guess it's because the people who wrote the work look up to the villains. I mean, how often does the villain steal the show and they the dress up the hero by them overcoming a villain that is so powerful? Well, I wouldn't don't I wouldn't conflate a writer empathizing with their villain. Like, yes, there are people who are writers who are just like, I basically wrote myself, an idealized version of myself, an asshole in my own thing. But I wouldn't put the two together, right? Don't do that. That's like an actor. People like blaming actors for terrible stories and stuff, and actors are just hired. They're literally props, right? Actors say, "Hey, I want to play a role." Someone gives them words to read and puts makeup on their face and gives them costumes. And then there's an editor that goes, "You said this line 15 times. I want to pick the one that I want." So yeah, I don't do that. Don't do that. That's like what is it, Kelly Marie Tran or something that had death threats because of her role in a Star Wars movie. And I'm going like, she didn't put herself in the movie. She tried out. They wanted her to read those lines, wear that costume, and be part of a storyline that they didn't do anything with. That's not her fault. She's a prop. Actors are props. It's the producers, the person who produces the movie who has the final say in anything, movie, television show, is the fault of the thing that you see, not the actors in it, the writers, or nothing like that. According to Mr. Inconceivable, actors are only playing out people they could have been. True, that's exactly what they're doing. But they don't choose that. Whatever you see is given a green light by somebody above them. So I could be an actor right now and I could portray anything, but if nobody likes me and wants to see me, you'll never see it. You only see what someone has agreed to see, right? So an actor portrays a character, the director can go, I don't want you portraying the character that way. I want you to do it differently. And so the actor is either going to accept the paycheck and do it differently, and then that's what you see. Or the editor goes in and goes, yeah, I don't like those 15 times they did it that way. Let's pick the one where they changed it, or vice versa. So yeah, you can't really do that. I mean, you can, but it, yeah. So chains for me also, we talked about addiction and the unity part, and it could also be, I mean, chains could be a physical thing that exists in the world that does a thing. So what I mean is, let's do the classic monster chain down or demigod that's been removed from power and no one remembers the barely living God's name and they are chained down. There might be locks and keys to unchain them, or specific types of, I don't know, hammers, battle axes. I don't know um, 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 uh, what are the things that break chain? The tool with has a which gives you a lot of leverage that breaks chains and things like that. Maybe the player characters need to find that to release, a great hero or a godling that was supposed to bring light back to the world, and everyone's like, the sun hasn't risen for like 3 months now, and everyone's like, I didn't I didn't notice. The player character's like, maybe we should release Apollo or a sun god or something that's been chained up, and their goal is to go after the MacGuffin, a weapon, a device, or something like that that they need to use. And that can also be a great way. Why, thank you. That could also, the bolt cutters. Thank you, M. I was like, there's a device that actually breaks chains. Bolt cutters. That allows us to use lots of leverage and energy in a small area. Which bolt cutter? I wonder how old bolt cutters are. I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, we've got fantasy games where we've got pocket watches and steam engines. I guess bolt cutters don't really go that far back. So, sorry, you guys said something that made me go down a tangent in my brain. But it could be the release of a thing. Player characters may have chains themselves, and this is where you can get like kind of like a dark aspect to your role playing game, especially if you're in like you're playing a dark fantasy style game where the player characters, like when they defeat a monster, instead of them uh, there are options in fantasy and D20 games where the damage that you do, I think it's only in melee combat. But anyway, the damage you do doesn't kill the thing. You can decide not to kill it. And then the player characters then might be bounty hunters. They might be proctors, agents of authority, or something like that to capture, chain up. They are members of law enforcement, and they're bringing them to justice. And so those chains might be pretty important. They might be a symbol of authority, where they're running around and the PCs have them draped over their shoulders or in their mounted beasts and whatnot, going after enemies and such, or vice versa. There might be a faction out there that is doing this, that's going after people, and the PCs might say, I don't really like what you're doing. And so yeah, I think freeing a powerful entity, especially if the players are important to how the world moves, but they aren't the most powerful entities available. A story, this is how you can get around having very powerful entities that are the ones who are the true heroes, but are our baseline, scruffy, zero to hero characters are the important ones. So the 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 goal, the quest might be to release a celestial being that's actually going to stop the evil, but we need our heroes to unchain that person and go through a quest or something like that. We've seen that not too often because we often like to see our heroes, beat ass, but that could be a thing. Um, yeah, Thomason says that depends. Often actors will just choose to ad lib something, and they are famous enough that they get the sway to control it being included, or those instances where they demand something. Yeah, if they've got a lot of power. Let me pick somebody out. Tom Cruise, right? Tom Cruise owns Cruise Wagner production company, so that's why he's allowed to do stunts that are extremely dangerous because he's insuring himself, right? Most actors don't have that power, or it depends on their contract. If there are some great actors who've been in terrible movies, and maybe it's because in their contract they weren't allowed to be in the editing room. What's his name that played the Hulk? Mm, mm, mm. Oh, I can't remember his name. He played the Hulk once and left. Um, he had a conflict with Marvel because he wanted to be in the editing room, and Kevin Feige was like, "No, you're not controlling my thing," and he's like, "Fine, then I'm stepping away." And so that's all just contracts. It's all contractual, and there's some actors that are so good that it doesn't matter. Their ad libs are better than what the written word is. But then if you get a great writer or a producer that wants one over the other, they're going to say, "Hey, listen, I don't care about how good your ad libs are. You're going to read the words and you're going to like it." And the actor's like, "I like my paycheck. I'll read that." You know, Ed Norton. That's it. Ed Norton was the one. Thank you so much. Ed Norton was the one that wanted to be in the editing room for the Hulk, and they told him no. And so he was just like, "Well, give me a fine and get me the hell out of here," because he wanted to make himself look good, which is everyone's right. You get what you. It's not show friends; it's show business. So you only get what you negotiate. So yet Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's gotten away with demanding writing options in shows too, as another example. Yeah, there's no one specific thing. Every movie, every television show is its own contractual entity. So some of it, I mean, if sometimes if you see a great actor and you're like, and you're kind of cringing, like that doesn't. Why does it? Why is my favorite actor or actress, whatever, doesn't seem right, it's probably because of contractual obligation that didn't allow them to ad lib or didn't allow them to be in the editing room, or the director had a particular vision and a producer trusted the director more than certain people and things like that. So it's not always you can't always blame it on one entity. You usually have to blame it on the highest entity when you see something that you don't like. Which is why people were like, "Oh, I don't know why writers should get paid as much money. The writing sucks nowadays." And I'm like, "Yeah, it sucks. Maybe because they're treated bad. Maybe one came first. It's the chicken or the egg, right? Maybe that favorite show that went downhill might be because maybe they reduced the writing room from 12 people to 3, and instead of giving them 6 months to come up with a great idea, they were like 3 weeks and do the best you can. We need to chain the stars so that they cannot align to release the old gods. Ow. Ooh. Ooh. Maybe the chains are something you can't see until you see them on that day of the chains. And everyone realized, oh shit, what? There's a chain that's holding the strapped over the mountain range. It's really just a sleeping dragon. Uh-oh. Did not know that. Ancient peoples thought volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that were restless gods and creatures and beings that were ungodly, giant sized and whatnot. Maybe that's a real thing in your world, that there are, head in the clouds. There's a person in a loincloth chained to the ground, and you're like, yesterday, wasn't that a mountain? Because all I see is their chin poking down from under the clouds and stuff. Yeah. TA says, actually, I think they often end up filming both the ad lib and written lines. Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. And the cutting room ends up deciding which gets kept and which gets left on the floor or gets slotted into. That's exactly what happens. Person reads the lines a number of times. They stitch together what the editor and the producer and director think is the best, and then that's what you see. But you never get to see what's on the well. You very rarely get to see what was on the cutting room floor, which is never on the cutting room floor anymore. It's just all digital and stuff. So. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Um, there was a scene in a trailer for a movie. There are scenes in trailers for movies that you actually don't get to see in the movie because by the time the movie's finished, they actually edit it out. There's a great scene in a trailer for one of the uh, uh, Jason Bourne movies. And when you go into the movie, it was like, where the scene's not even in there. What the hell happened? Same thing happened for very blatantly for um, Rogue Star Wars, uh, Rogue One, and Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2. There's one where he's got a manhole cover in his hand and he's spinning around, but when you see in the movie, it's the same scene, but he uses a web to pick up the same manhole cover to kind of edit it differently. So yeah. TA says, when actors being blamed for bad acting, I've experienced from making short films ages ago. There are no bad actors, only bad directors when it comes to acting itself. Oh, hot take. Yeah, the only bad actors you never see because they just won't show up, or some other bad behavior, and not the acting being bad. With the right director, they can motivate an actor to get the acting they need from them, and getting it in a believable acting from the actor, and editing. Yep. Sorry, it's moving a little bit. Sorry, combine a chat. Uh, and editing out for an event was the Spider-Man movie that had him swinging between the Twin Towers because of 9/11. It was cut even from the trailers. I remember seeing it. How did I get to see that? Yeah, I got Hollywood on the brain. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing movie punditry. Sorry, but it bring there is a reason that I'm bringing this up. But I want to share something else with you that I feel like is a little bit more important. And while it may seem like it's a little bit tangential, um, I think it's a it brings to light something, and I think it's pretty cool. And I just want to show this to you. I'll throw the link in here. It's a bit of a long uh, article, so I won't tell you that it's not TLDR. It is. But Dungeons and Dragons players death row, and it's pretty interesting because it brings to light a thing about escapism, and chains relate to us. I mean, I'm sorry, the chains of our thoughts can be held down and allowing us. I know I've my life has changed by playing role playing games and being able to imagine myself in different places has truly saved my life. I mean, like there are people who I've known. Um, I'd say about 30 to 40% of the people I grew up with are probably dead now. Um, but there's this article written about individuals on death row in Texas, and Tony Ford, this image of this individual, was is on a death row, and others. And I'm going to page through this because I want you to see some things and the ingenuity that these death row inmates have is incredible. So I gotta have you see this. I'm not going to read the whole article. It's a very introspective piece about people's behaviors and the individuals that were spotlighted in this article, and it goes into the past and how they got to death row and the changes in the death row policies. So it is a bit long, but I want to show you something here because here we go. Most, if not all, of the materials we consider that we use for Dungeons and Dragons, they don't have this. So they have limited pencil, paper. They can request some of these items and things, commissary and whatnot. And look at the detail. That's a mine. By the way, that's a D20. So they're not allowed to have dice. So that's a D20. Look at the maps and the detail. When you got a lot of time in your hands, you're trying to escape. Holy shit! This is some of Ward Billy Wardlow's Dungeons and Dragons maps, character sheets, and campaign notes from his time on death row. His cardboard game spinner is at center, and this is from Glenn DeGord for the New York Times. Sorry, look at that. I can't zoom in here, but I mean, there's like feats and skills. I want to say this is actually Pathfinder, maybe? Lizard Folk Poison Dusk. Can't read. I can't read it. It's so detailed and stuff. I mean, there's like science fiction, and there's some more things in this article. The imagery and whatnot, and they talk about the people because of the changes in death row laws, instead of waiting 3 to 5 years, people are waiting 20 years plus. And sorry, there's come on. Here we go. There's some more things. And because they're in different cells, they have to kind of maneuver through maps like you would playing chess. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna move to J8. And J8 is a location. And then, hey, I'm gonna move 30 feet to the north and stuff. Okay, well then that means you move over to V20 and it's way down, you know what I mean? Like you have to do it grid wise. Crazy. Crazy. Anyway, I just want to show this off to you and have people who are interested in this to maybe read the let's see if I could read some of the comments if it'll let it come up. Um, I feel like this is a potential book, not just an article, so compelling. These men have changed in profoundly positive ways since committing their crimes when so young. The non-fantasy players in these games of D&D will never be profiled by a gifted writer and once inmate, not for violent crime, having both defended the very rare murderer who faces the death penalty in modern America. And it goes on, goes on. There's something here. Someone said, if I could, it's been pushed. Mm-mm-mm. It's September 2nd. It was much earlier. These people could volunteer at correctional facilities. Yeah, somebody says, I know I'm supposed to feel sorry for these people, but I can't help coming back to what they did to put them in that position, which is true. Mm-mm-mm. It's so silly. All right, let me get out of here. Let's get back to what we were talking about before. Mm-mm-mm-mm. All right, here we go. Uh, Oops. What happened? Let me see what you guys have to say. Sorry about that. Mm-mm-mm. There we go. Tia says, "Well, I still think the direction for movies will be role playing geeks like us feeding our gaming sessions into AI and outputting movies from it. Maybe I don't know. Predictive AI systems, I think, are far too. They move towards the mean rather than the edges, and I think that's what will limit AI systems from creating like interest anything particularly interesting. But copycatting, yeah, AIs are pretty good at that. That's interesting that slavery was brought up earlier, and now you mentioned where slavery is still existing legally, the prison system. Yeah, got to read the amendment that abolished slavery. Yeah, it was used as an end. United States used imprisonment as an end around for slavery to get free labor or very cheap labor out of people by putting them in jail. Uh, yeah, Mike says I read a thing about prison D&D and spinners instead of dice, etc. a few years ago. It wasn't New York Times though, so I can only assume it's continued to grow in numbers and prevalence. It's probably been around far longer. It's been brought into the public eye because Dungeons and Dragons is public, but they've been doing this for a long time. A friend of mine was in prison, and they would carve dice out of soap. They would use coins. They would make paper D20s by gluing them together and cutting them and stuff like that. Yeah, it was very common. My friend wasn't on death row, but he did go to prison for 4 years and they played Dungeons and Dragons. Well, they played role playing games a lot. Sometimes it was D&D, but superheroes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a very common thing to do. Um, some people in prison have had like trauma and emotional issues, so he said that was a problem. But getting into like a D&D game was just as important as getting into like a card game or lifting weights. Like it was like a gang setup. Like you were only invited. You could watch, but you were only invited and stuff. Yeah, it was a whole big thing. Yeah. um TA says, yeah, artists in prison are quite numerous and have all the time in the world as a result of being in prison to work on art, which gives their brain an escape from their imprisonment. Absolutely. Which it kind of goes to show that speaking on a post-human, transhumanist, futurist kind of thing, there is a growing idea that if technology advances enough, we can find out every human being's potential greatness and what they can supply to the rest of humanity. And irregardless of your background or your education or something like that. So the fact that someone committed a crime doesn't necessarily relate to their skill in being able to create art or imagination or music or something like that, right? It's just their choices and their circumstances led them to commit a crime, but that doesn't mean they're not brilliant. That doesn't mean they're not artistically. Um, they have an artistic bent. It doesn't mean that they aren't exceptional with spatial elements, creating detailed maps and things, right? Mm-mm. Mike Mayer says, side note, I realized my absolute best D&D campaigns I ever ran were when I was in a COVID lockdown. I had loads of free time. I envy my abilities from 2 years ago. You know what? Lots of people realize some of their skills through pressure, the pressure cooker of COVID lockdown. There's a lot of people. Uh, a lot of people realize they weren't as shy as they used to be. I'm looking at you, OnlyFans. Yeah. Yep. TA says, yeah, I see my concept of circuit board lines for the infill of a character sheet. I use my Skyway and Aliens game. That almost looked like a crossword puzzle. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That image. I'm gonna pull it back up while I do this here because I kind of rolled to the bottom of this. Sorry. Okay, so this one, these pages here look like a crossword puzzle to me, kind of. But I'm gonna roll up to the other image, which, yeah, circuit boards. Here we go. Let's see if we get it there. Try to centralize this a little bit. Yeah, look at that circuit. Did they make a dungeon from a circuit board? Hell yeah. Why the hell not? Right? D20 spinner. Why the hell not? Colored and everything. Look how perfect that looks. Took a quarter or bottom of a soda can or something like that. I mean, look, colored in and stuff. Let me, yeah, sweet. Death penalty is so barbaric, so it is no wonder the U.S. still has them. Oh. Texas is proud of their death penalty. Yeah. That is why the death penalty is so slow moving too, because most people do not want to accidentally put to death someone that might have been innocent in the end and find out after the death. Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, one eye, Death Angel. Hey, what's going on there? Mm-mm-mm. All right, hey guys. Okay, now a bit depressing, sure, and not to benefit from the not to benefit from the dark the darkness that is in people's backgrounds. But today is the day of chains, and I did want to express like um, very much like M squared was mentioning that there's a possibility that this doesn't necessarily mean that there's slavery in the classic sense, although player characters beating the ass of people who are slavers. Listen, there are Dungeons and Dragons modules that were named after slavers, right? And beating them. That's awesome. That's a very cool thing. But also, the idea could be that maybe the players have been imprisoned and this is just their way of escaping it, or maybe this is something that's very common in your setting or the corner of the map of your world. And how do the player characters who are very against this very thing maneuver? It's the yin yanging of your NPCs. Maybe some of your very goodly, you know, um, goodly characters have just a dollop of something pretty evil, like enslaving their enemies. Whereas the bad guys, who are harsh and brutal and everything, hey, what's up there, Justice Angel? Um, uh, Maybe your bad guys have just a little dollop of goodness, and they're like, listen, we have a brutalistic society. Those goblinoids out there in the wild are like, yeah, we might be brutalistic, but we don't believe in chaining people up. That's the purview of your elves and gnomes or something like that, right? They're just like, we believe in freedom of all types. And sure, that freedom might be that there are people who are very that are true anarchists and do whatever they want and how they feel. Sure, but maybe they're like, yeah, but we'll break those chains. Breaking chains is a type of um, symbology in religion as well. That could be a thing here, thing as well. You guys talk about cats, funny. Um, mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that's what cats do, because cats are going to be in front of you and they're going to get your attention no matter what. Break break the chain of the cat enslavement, which could be a thing as well. But also, what would be a very interesting thing to have with Mike talking about establishing strong links with other communities and people and entities and factions, and the player characters may be involved in ensuring that those relationships are held together. And the Day of Change could be um, an a festive event of reestablishing. Hey, listen. Hey, neighbor on the other side of the river, we have always been friends, right? Today, we're going to reestablish our connections, and having someone try to break those bonds or create different bonds might be quite important. And a chain may be a symbol of that connection, right? Where the nobility, I have to come up with something. So the nobility or the agents that do this come together, and you see that for a single day they chain themselves together, and it could be considered a symbol of honor to for the Day of Change to be chained to someone who has normally been your enemy, or like like sometimes used in marriage, where a scarf or a rope or something like that is draped between the couple, the throuple or whatever, and is draped over their arms, and they make their vows and such like that. And it's, it's far more, silky and linen and sunshine and stuff. But there might be enemies that are just like, oh, I can't stand. I'm looking at you, Michael Jackson's "Beat It," where the two gang members are chained together, and then they have to fight it out and stuff, in a knife fight, but their arms are chained together. I mean, this may be a thing that's in the world. Like, all right, hey, barbarian, you're gonna get chained to the ogre and go. Yeah. Or like I said, two enemies. The hobgoblin chieftain is chained leg to leg, arm to arm, or whatever, with the, I don't know, the the knighthood's leader, and it's like for 24 hours, and the people could be looking at them and judging them, like, what's their behavior like? Are they going to help each other? Are they going to murder kill each other? We're proud of our holy knight, linking themselves to our enemy just for today. It could be an enemy mine situation where they really do hate each other, but because they've been chained together and tossed out into the wild, and now they have to survive and get back home, maybe they do bond together. um T says there is no anarchy really. It's only decentralization of government until every person is a government of and unto themselves. That is true. That is very true. um Most households run by anarchy. Yeah. Yeah, give the cat a box. The cat's like, I demand box. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, yeah, that is what up with mine when she gets nuts and the sister was sitting on the desk by my keyboard. Yeah. Oh, mine. I've got my microphone in front of me, and there's a gap between my face and the camera, and it's because my camera is sitting on top of my monitor, so there's about, I don't know, a foot and a half, 2 foot, a good forearm's length away from me from my screen. So that's why sometimes you'll see me like lean forward and squint a little bit. And she loves to sit there. So yeah, she hasn't done it yet, but she sometimes will. There have been plenty of times where you got the cat swipe in front of the camera and stuff. It's always yeah. Ta says something that would be interesting in a multiple species setting of, say, fantasy or an alien thing is having a group that enslaves according to one group, while the group doing it considers it adoption. Ooh, so you're saying like the aliens that come to Earth to put chains around our necks, they just think like it's like it's an adoption agency, and they're trying to save the humans. That would be pretty interesting for like an alien species going like, oh, we just thought you were pets because we think on a higher plane of existence. Sorry about that. We don't let our pets run around our world. And the humans are like, what? They're like, well, you have pets too. You walk them every day and rub their tummies. We can. can I rub your tummy? Tentacle creature. And the human's like, stop. I mean, oh, wait, this feels pretty good. Oh, no. Mm-mm-mm. Heathen. Hilarious, hilarious. So anyway, guys, there's many stories we can tell in our fantasy concerning the Day of Chains. You can make this; it easily falls into the grimdark, right? But we can also tell some great stories about players escaping. The Great Escape is a great story. Story hook. Hey, PCs, you've been captured, and now you must escape out into the rest of the world. Especially if the PCs are chained together and they have to like get out of there until they can find their supplies and their ill-gotten gains and escape a hold. There may be a very powerful faction that's trying to capture the PCs, a bounty hunter situation kind of thing where they need to be enslaved, or maybe slavery becomes the new norm in your setting and the PCs are like, hell no, we're not letting this go. It's getting a little bit too hey, listen, it was fine when the hobgoblins were doing it, but when once the halflings and the gnomes and the elves started getting involved in it, it's like hell no, we need to stop this and nip this in the bud. And the player characters might actually be on the losing side of an argument that they morally and ethically feel that they are correct, and that would be a pretty interesting place for you to place your player characters in if they're mature enough for it and everyone agrees to it. Yeah. Oh brother, where art thou? Hell's yes. Yeah. What is Oh brother, where art thou is the story of, is that the Odysseus story? I can't remember. The Odyssey? It's based on the Odyssey. But yes, very much so. It could be that where the players are like, okay, listen, all right, I don't know why we can't break these chains. And someone, one player character raises their hand, I made a knowledge check. It's Day of Chains. Sorry, we're not going to be able to get the chains off for at least 24 hours. And the PC is like, don't. Oh, that's right. Okay, so that means, but we could use this to our advantage. And the druid's like, so you're saying I can't shape change into a T Rex? And everyone's like, please don't. Yeah, please don't. Mm-mm-mm. Yep. Chains aren't always cold iron. Maybe, yeah, Baron. Maybe a warm gold or a soft silver, the unbreakable adamantine chain or mystic mithril. Yep, it could be a spiritual one. It could be something that is non, something that isn't visible, or it's visible but it's arcane. Yeah, or the player characters can see a chain around someone knowing that it is they are under the control of, say, a powerful vampiric entity or an otherworldly Githyanki mind flayer type of being. And the player characters are talking to the NPC, but they can kind of see the ephemeral chain that reaches around their neck. It stretches, it's around their ankle and it stretches off in the distance and it disappears. And they're like, everybody, shh, stop talking around this person. They're an agent for this outside individual. And everyone's like, what do you mean agent? They've been our friend this whole time. Like, no, they aren't. The concrete internal combustion. Nice Day says, is there a panel link I can use to join the conversation? What do you mean? Hi. You're already part of the conversation. You thought you were wrong, but you were mistaken. Death Angel says, so what is with the notion that everyone is offended by the concept of slavery, especially when it's never portrayed as a good thing? Slavery is unfortunately a theme of many civilizations. It's not everyone. It's a loud, small portion that, um, well, it's a confluence of things. One is a a corporate entity like Hasbro doesn't want their game associated with slavery. That's just marketing, right? You don't want negative connotations associated with your brand. So, and then from on high that comes down low, and then it goes into having undesirable features in your gaming world, and then people latch onto that, and they want their emotions, because slavery's wrong, right? So emotionally, people want the world to reflect their emotions. So when they see it, a small voice can become extremely loud. They start screaming about not having it in role playing games and things like that. Most mature people are like you, like, "What? But it's wrong. That's why it's in the game, because we want to beat ass of those who think it's right." Right? That's the whole point of it. Otherwise, we would get rid of flesh eating monsters too, but we don't do that, you know. So yeah. Yep. Heathen says chains aren't always physical. They can be money, family, regulations, land. Yeah, 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 yeah. And and those things, especially if you are responsible for those things, people will judge you. Um, People will judge you for that. Nice Day says, "Can I join this podcast on Cam on the panel?" No, 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 no. You are invited. This is a one-man show. Only the individual who's about to pick their nose gets to be. Well, that's not true. I do interviews. I've done panels before. So yeah, but it's not usually random. I got to get to know you and what you're about and things like that. So yeah, hell, I want Dead Man and Drew and the rest of them on the panel where they've been with me here forever. So you are correct. And if they ever offer to be on camera or something like that, I'll probably say yes. An analogy for Paladin's oath is a chain of sorts, especially if that oath puts them in conflict with what they want to do. A warlock patron, a cleric's faith, a druid's devotion to nature could also be the same thing. Familial chains. Yep, absolutely. Yep, yep, yep. Hell's yeah. Yeah, and yep, Heathen goes on to say that, yep, chain, an oath can be a chain, especially now you could literally make this mechanical, like a character makes a promise, and a fey creature is like, you made a promise, and that promise literally becomes a chain, and the PC looks down at their wrist and they're like, every time they're doing a thing against the thing that they promised, you see the chain becoming more and more physical, and it's just like, at first they're the only ones that can see it, but eventually someone else looks at their wrist and they go, you made a promise, didn't you? And I just promised that I would help their friend out. Well, you're not doing it. What's the spell? I'm going to mispronounce it. Gaius, whatever. Shit, I don't know. The quest spell, right? The old AD&D spell that forces you to go on a quest, or if you don't, you'll die, kind of thing. Yep. Even social conventions can be changed. Hell, the factions we align ourselves, political factions and things we align ourselves to, don't seem like chains until we disagree or attempt, or we see others disagree with the people we align with, and when they are treated bad, it's the gang member that gets jumped into a gang and they go, sweet, I'm part of a gang, and then one of the gang members is like, I don't want to do this anymore, I like a different life, and then they get their ass beat or murder killed to try to leave, and you go, ooh, shit. This ain't nicety, this is a chain. Yeah, promises made this day of chains can't be broken. I love that. I love that. Maybe here's a strange course of events. You make a promise on the day of chains. That oath, that bond can't be broken, but everyone's gunning for the next day when it comes up. Let's say it's next year. Let's say there's a certain moon cycle. There's a On the great solstice, it ends, and everyone's like, "Fuck, I can't wait for this to end." Yeah, I know I made a promise, but or or it could be seen as a badge of honor. So a goodly knight made a promise not to hurt the starving innocent goblinoids that live in the valley, right? And they go, oh, I didn't realize this is what's going on. They make a promise, and then the political landscape changes, and they're like, hey, knights, we want you to go slaughter them because they're in our way. And the knight is like, hell no, I made a promise. And the population is like, well, he kind of made a promise, so yeah. When I hear says, "Ooh, dice out of soap, that's cool." Yeah, yeah. A friend of mine was in 4 years of prison, and he was in a place, and yeah, they made dice out of soap. They made spinners. They made geometric things out of paper and cardboard to make dice. They also used paper strips in a can cup or a hat, and you know 20 strips of paper, push them into a hat, reach around, reach in a die. Oh, I got a 14. Randomizers, playing cards. They would write on the back of playing cards, stuff like that. Uh, yeah, there's a reason. There is a reason they call it leaving the plantation when someone who is by some physical attribute expected to be part of one particular party or another. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all fun and games when you're part of a political party, but when you disagree with them, oh my god, you leave. You even mention that you slightly disagree with a policy of your own political party and see what happens. I promise to disappoint. Yeah. Yeah, Baron Cantrell is a paladin of the Order of the Oath. Wow, what kind of paladin order would that? Holy shit. Imagine. Okay, okay, okay. Since you went there, all right, heathen, Baron, all right. We brought up the Rage Mage the other day. Imagine this. There is a paladin like order of individuals, and their oath changes because what they do is they travel around. And when they go to different communities, they are known as the people who take the oath of the community. So they they have a set of hard ingrained they have an ethical and moral outlook. They take an oath of honor, but what they do is they're like envoys. They go to a community, and whatever that community's oaths are, they take that oath, and it changes from place to place. They travel around the world and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. That's a really cool idea. That my paladin's oath just changes. Like when I go to a new place and I'm gonna rip something out of my ass. Maybe there's an oath of the wild, and the oath is that you become a hunter, and you grab a spear and you battle into the dark jungle or rainforest or something, and you're there on your white horse and paladins thing, and you're like, nope, I'm gonna take the oath of the wild, strip off the armor, strap a sword on the back, got myself a loincloth. Hell, let's go. That an order, a oath order that keeps changing. I like that idea. Yeah, Death Angel says, I'd love to have an in-person conversation with you at some point in the future, perhaps even play a game or two. I think that'd be blast learning moment. No, I think I'd benefit more from playing with you guys. I don't know when or how I would be able to do that. I'm here in the Ohio Valley, and honestly, now I don't even have a physical group any longer. It's been a while. It's been a long while. Um, but there's a lot of people in Ohio. Shit. Knights of the Last Call. Isaac Arthur is out here. Oh, what's the podcast? Shit, not fuck. Anyway, there's a ton of people, gamers that live in Ohio that I could drive to, not very far away. I don't know why I don't have a relationship with them. It's really weird. I'm gonna have to correct that. Thank you for reminding me about that. I'm gonna have to correct that. Yeah, yep. Oh, there you go. Yep. Thank you so much with that. The pencil, yeah. In high school, I'm sorry, Dr. Turd Midget says, in high school, when my teachers confiscated my dice, I realized a wooden pencil is hexagonal, and I could write the numbers on the sides and roll pencils. Yep, yep. I remember rolling pencils in school. Yeah. D6s. Yep. You could have a whole uh, D6 dice pool with pencils, rolling pencils. Mm-mm. Not sure if anyone here is aware of it, but when some are referring to black and white, they're not talking skin color, but rather capitalist or communist, just like in the early days of the CCP days. Uh, I don't know that. I think that where they had color coding for rich versus poor, there being either red or black. Now I do remember that one. Um, Redlining was a thing, and they color coded communities and stuff like that. Knights of the dinner table. Is it? Maybe. Knights of the dinner. Yeah, one community has an oath of peace, the other has an oath of war. I wonder if you could switch your paladin's oath. Maybe it makes a point of which one you would pick, or the paladins group is besieged by different communities, and the one that has the best argument wins and gets the devotion of that group. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know. I should do a shout out for where everybody is at. When I hear this says these dice alternatives are cool. You know what? It's not. Um, what is it? What's the term? Something ingenuity is the mother of ingenuity. Oh, you lost a dice collection? Yeah, I've got a very strange dice collection. Words, images, body parts, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, weather and all that. Oh, thanks. Yeah, the philosophical paladins. Yeah, I love that idea. The philosophical paladins. The best argument wins. Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. Yes, there she. That's her name. Necessity. Yes, because when you don't have a thing and you are restricted in your ingenuity, then you have to think creatively in the small box. We are talking about the day of change, right? So yeah, there is the idea that you have you a painter only has three colors they can use. That gives them the restriction forces a creativity rather than having a blank canvas in any color they want. A lot of artists are like when they take artist commissions, a lot of artists are energized by the restrictions rather than just creating random art, because you say, listen, I want art, but here's the deal. I want it to be modern day, but I also want overlay in it Cthulhu, like Lovecraftian horror. But I want to show this, and I want to show it. And some artists are like, sweet, oh, good, okay. So I want it. It has to be modern day, so it can't be fantasy. But maybe I can throw in like a guy with a sword in her back, or a lady with like a bow and arrow, or maybe her hands glowing. And but in the shadows in the sky, I'm going to have like the moon and the clouds, but the clouds have like tendrils coming out of it or something. You know what I mean? Things like that. There's a Space Marine chapter like that in 40K. Storm Wardens, I think they are called All About Debating and Duels. That would be pretty interesting, especially if the paladin's order is like, listen, um, loved having this conversation. I love debating all this, but we have to make a decision. And at the end of it, we're probably going to murder kill one of you as a group. So just be aware. We just want to be fair. So we're going to take all the evidence in, and we're going to go have a little quorum, and we're going to decide. It'll take about an hour or two, and we'll be very diplomatic about it, and we're going to be very democratic, and we're just going to write down yes or no, or which oath we want to take, and we're going to reach in a hat and pick one. We'll have a small child pick it, and have some fun. And after that, we're probably going to murder kill everybody. That's an antithesis to our oath. So yeah, you might want to make a run for it right now. Mm-mm-mm. Wow, since the mid '80s, you guys are old. like I'm not. Reminds me, the fewer points I have in GURPS for my character, the more powerful I end up building them. Yes. I remember once we had a terrible time playing GURPS Black Ops. And in GURPS, you make like 50 point, 100, 150 point characters. 150 points is pushing it. 50 to 100 is about average, I think. You go 25 too. You kind of make normal human beings. Black Ops had 500 to 650 point highly skilled characters. And if you know GURPS, when you take a skill, you also have tangential bonuses to other skills, which complicated things. And it was horrible. We played it, It wasn't bad. It was just like, okay, I've got 87 skills that all modify all the other 37 other skills that I get, and it was just. Drew says, seems like today the Germans are not dominating chat. I don't know why that is. Normally here in the States, we don't get at a minimum half of you guys are across the pond. So, um, Oh, Heathen, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. So modern fantasy where it's in the shadows. Yeah. I think that would be kind of cool. Anyway, that's a dream of mine. One day it'll happen, but I'm not exactly sure when. Destiny said, regardless, nobody ever wants to tell me how to use those damn three seashells. You listen, if that ain't a Demolition Man riff, shout out. I don't know what is. I wonder if there's a. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. It's at the end of the show, so we always go crazy with this one. Okay, how do the three see? All right, how does the damn three seashells work? All right, let's share this out here. Now I didn't read this, so I don't know if this is a true thing. So I mean, this could be some old bullshit, but who knows? So so I googled it, and let's see, that's Reddit. Let's go down a Reddit deep dive and see how terrible we can get lost in this. Writer Daniel Waters explained the three seashells from Demolition Man at a thing last night, sort of 9 years ago. Okay, Dan talked about other curiously watchable failed star vehicles he wrote on, like Hudson Hawk and Demolition Man. I'm paraphrasing. Let's see. Dan said, I won't tell you the actual secret, but I'll tell you where it came from. There's a scene where Stallone has to use a restroom. I'm trying to come up with futuristic things you'd find in there. I was having trouble, so I called my buddy, another screenwriter across town, asked him if he had any ideas. Ironically enough, that guy was taking a dump when he answered the phone, looked around his bathroom and said, I have a bag of seashells on my toilet as a decoration. I said, okay, I'll make something out of that. Whole Egyptian theater went crazy. It was amazing. That's not an answer. uh, Pretty funny. No. I suppose you could guess at it. Although they could. Here's the funny thing. They could just be maybe the seashells. Maybe he had to lift them up. It could just be a cover for a thing. I don't know. Taco Bell, yeah. Yep. GURPS has its advantages. I generally like it, but the combat is slow as molasses. Yeah, I do agree with that. And it's a little bit, while I appreciate the fact that there's only like 3 attributes and stuff, it's also a little bit like confining. It was like, oh my God. But they have some of the best books. GURPS has some of the best written books I've ever seen. I love it. When I says I hear at a Demolition Man themed Taco Bell they actually have 3 seashells in the bathrooms. Yeah, it could have been like maybe the toilet paper was under one of them. I don't know. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. I know we always go off on different effing tangents around here, but that's what we do here, right? We meaning me meaning I. So, but we do like to have ourselves some great ideas and things. So, uh, you may see me do some recorded events. I'm starting to have more time. My job, I'm a letter carrier and by profession. And over the past 2.5 years, I would say up to 3 years, the overtime was ungodly. But now that I have the highest seniority, my gray hairs are kicking in. Yay! Not kicking in, but they're showing that that I have some seniority in job. So I may have some more time on my hands. Listen, when I'm about 4.5 years from retirement. So I'm not going to be a Walmart greeter. I'm not going to wear the blue and yellow vest. I'm probably going to do this as a real thing. And hopefully you guys will be around since then, or even find me back, if you lose sight or whatever, and we'll have ourselves a good time and do that. Squirrel out then. Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, guys, have a great one. Have a great weekend as well. Squirrel. got, I gotta get a squirrel. I was supposed to get a stuffed squirrel. Have a great weekend. Everybody, I'll see you guys Monday. Peace.